Hey everybody, it's Ryan from the Breaking Bad show. And as I was about to hit the record button to do this recording, I realized that I was going to come on and I was going to say I was excited about today's show. And I realized that I think I say that every time. I started thinking about that and I said, you know what? That's because I am always excited. Be excited about life and what we got ahead. And I'm excited. It's beautiful spring weather up here in New England. The short sleeves and shorts are out. Everything's starting to green up. I get the first lawn mow of the season in, and I'm excited. I love the summer weather. I'm excited about the cover coming off of this bad boy. Getting that nice summer swimming in. The only thing that I'm excited more about that in the summer weather is today's interview that we have coming up with our guest today, Adam Wills. Adam is someone that I connected with on LinkedIn a while ago before I even met Chad, before we started this podcast. And I've always been attracted to people who have left their law enforcement profession and are now doing things, whether it's entrepreneurial or a new career or something that they found that they're happier with and they're living a better life now. One thing we talk about on the show a lot with a lot of our guests is what our life is like when we're not wearing the uniform outside of the police department, because ultimately there's going to come a time that we're going to take that uniform off for the last time. And it may be our decision when that happens. There's also a lot of things that can happen that makes it not our decision. We might not be ready, but we can't work anymore for various reasons. So one thing Adam does is to help police officers prepare for that time before that time comes. Today we've got an awesome conversation revolving around that topic. A little bit about Adam's life, what he experienced on the job, and what led him to what he's doing now. Hope you all check out the show, and hope you enjoy, because this is the Breaking Bad show. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Breaking Bad show. I'm Ryan.
Hey, everybody. I'm Chad.
And we are super excited this week. I've been looking forward to this interview for a while, even since I was introduced to him on LinkedIn and found out about who he was. I'm excited to bring our guest today, Adam Wills, onto the show. Adam is the CEO of LEO to CEO. He has an awesome law enforcement podcast called the Copreneur, and he's a former police officer from out in Colorado. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce to you Adam Wills. Welcome to the show, Adam.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on. It's unique to be on the other side of the microphone, so to speak, for a change.
So Adam, we'd like to start off and really get people going. So fill us in a little bit about who Adam is, where'd you grow up, and a little bit of the beginning of the path you took.
Oh man, now you want to get real deep, don't you?
Wait a second, hold on a second. Ryan, how did you not start off with the beard, bro? How did you not, can we acknowledge the beard?
Oh, I did that before we hit record.
I know. That is one of the most amazing beards I've ever seen.
Yes, for those of you that are listening and can't see, Chad and I, who both have short beards, are very jealous of Adam's awesome beard that he has going right now.
He's like a lumberjack. If you're only listening, he's got this amazing red, thick, dense, perfectly manicured beard.
Oh, I don't know about perfectly manicured, but it takes a lot of beard oil and beard wax to get this thing looking halfway decent. So my wife doesn't appreciate it when she washes the pillowcases. So,
oh man, that's got to be a greasy pillowcase.
So to answer your question, I guess, and actually, you know what? Back to the beard. Why do we can't leave the beard yet? You made me think of a funny story. So I spent some time in Uganda several years back. Went over there on a mission trip, and the reaction from the natives in Uganda when they see a 260-pound, bald-headed, red-bearded dude is it was just comical, man. People would just about fall on the ground and be like, what is it? They call me Mzungu everywhere I went. They're like, Mzungu. Anyway, so I just took on that as my nickname, I guess.
Did you ever find out what that meant, Mzungu?
It means large white man, I think. I don't really know, but
well, they hit that right on the head.
They sure knew what it meant. So so I actually originally hail from upstate New York, to answer your question. I started my law enforcement career in a town in Western New York, upstate, if you will, just outside of the city of Rochester, little area we call the town of Greece. And so I started there, just kind of doing some part-time stuff for a little over a year, and then decided to venture out to Colorado. I had some friends that lived out here and absolutely loved it out here. Thought it was beautiful. I was looking for a change myself anyway, and took the venture out to Colorado with everything I could fit in my car. And within a couple months, started working with the Weld County Sheriff's Office, and spent about 8 years, a little over 8 years there. Did a whole bunch of things between working in the jail, working out on patrol, doing some gang stuff, doing some interdiction stuff. I was one of those really strange dudes that actually liked graveyards. And so I would always bid when I had my option. I would always bid into graveyards because I didn't like doing cold bergs, hated civil process. I just wanted to go find some piles to step in when I could find them and get those in progress calls. And so, yeah, I was creature of the night, if you will. Actually, I was telling my kid the other day, he was telling me he was scared of the dark. I said, you know what I learned in 15 years in law enforcement? I said, you don't need to be scared of the dark. You just need to be scarier than everything else that's in the dark.
Yes, I love that. That is good.
So, yep, I did that for a while, and then I ventured out, was asked to be under sheriff in a small eastern Colorado county, in Yuma County, and came out there and was under sheriff for a little over 5 years, 6 years, something like that. And then that leads into my transition story. So that was where I landed the end of my career, if you will.
So I want to go back to something. And I hope you don't mind me asking a personal question, but this is what the show is about, and we can all learn from each other. So
yeah.
You said you needed a change, and I know, because I was in that boat. Ryan was in that boat, so we're all speaking from the same language here. But what change were you looking for? Was it a lifestyle change, a mental health thing? What was going on in your life at that time?
I think there was a lot of different factors involved. Without getting into a political conversation about it, I had a hard time. I was working part-time there for the time that I was there, and I was having a difficult time because of my demographic getting a full-time job in the state of New York. And so after multiple attempts at testing and then getting beat out by people that tested lower than I did with a different demographic, I decided it was kind of time to go. But I think there's a time in every young man's life where he kind of needs to step outside the comfort and circle of his own family and venture out and kind of have his own adventure and do his own thing. And I think that was a big part of it for me too, is I was born and raised in that town, and being a cop in the town that I grew up in had some allure to it, but it also came with some challenges, because I actually had kind of a challenging upbringing, and I did not have a reputation for being a guy that anybody thought and predicted in my high school years would become a cop. And so that's a double-edged sword, right? And so anyway, the opportunity presented itself, and I said, you know what, go west, young man. That's what I'm going to do. So it was just kind of a chance I took, and it's paid off, and I absolutely love it here in Colorado. So
that's awesome. Awesome. Ryan and I talk about, I mean, it's really the nexus for the show is former first responders, former cops that left and are now successful entrepreneurs, which is what you are. And it is such a cool thing, but it's so rare. I mean, at least we're interacting with people that have done it a lot, but still, when you look at all of law enforcement compared to how many leave early to go become an entrepreneur and then also have success, it's still pretty rare. So what has been the neatest thing for you? And we'll get into maybe what have you learned and some of the struggles, but what's been the coolest thing of taking off the handcuffs, so to speak, and being able to be your own man and run the business the way you see fit?
Yeah, I'll actually give you two things. The first one is the most obvious, and that's that I realized toward the end of my law enforcement career that my two oldest children, I have 4 children, my 2 oldest children really didn't know daddy the way I wanted them to. I wasn't present the way I needed to be when I was home. And part of that was due to what I later realized was some trauma, little T trauma, I'll say, that I was carrying around that I didn't recognize until I was out of my career. Another part of that was just the nature of the role of undersheriff, and essentially just being on call all the time and in fielding phone calls at all hours of the day and night. And I forgot how to switch off cop mode. And so for that 6-year period of time, I never shut down. And my wife had pointed that out to me that, I never really shut down. And so it impacted the relationship I had with my 2 oldest. And at that time, we were getting ready to have our third. And I was like, this is not what I want to do. I don't want to, this is not the relationship and the way I want my kids to look back on who their dad was. And so that's one of the coolest things. The other thing that's really cool and has just been a more recent development in the last year and a half is now I have the opportunity to mentor other cops that are going through some of the same things I did and are looking to pursue entrepreneurship. And that has given me a whole new sense of meaning and purpose in what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis, and has given me an energy that I just didn't have before.
That's cool. So I left last year, March of 2021. You were one of the first ones I found on social media on LinkedIn. The graphics of your LEO, the CEO, images and your marketing materials were awesome, just eye catching. And I'm like, here's a guy that is where I want to be. I was terrified. I was scared. Not that I didn't know what I was doing, but it's that fear of leaving the comfort and the security of what and the compensation package, and short of committing a crime, you can't get fired as a cop, and all these things are so safe, but that's what we kind of fall back on. And I love the job too, but seeing what you were doing was like, man, this guy's doing it. I know I can do it too. One story I want to quick share with you, because you said this, and I want to see what your thoughts about it are, because you resonated with your 2 oldest kids. I wanted to be a county detective really, really bad. In 2014, I put in a memo. I was only a cop for 7 years, detective for 3 years at that point. But I knew that's what I wanted to be. So I put in for it, came down to me and another guy. The other guy got it, way more experience than me, totally deserved it. Out of the blue, in January or December of 2016, my wife was just about to deliver a 3rd kid. And I got a call out of the blue. They kept my resume on file. Now they want to bring me down for an interview, this time with the DA personally, and everything I learned from other county detectives that, be prepared to give an answer, because this is going to be a yes or no. Hey, they're going to offer you a job, not just do a regular interview. So I scheduled the interview for the day after my wife goes into labor, and we're sitting in the hospital, and I'm holding my newborn son. He's my 3rd. And I'm looking down at him and I'm thinking, if I take this county job, it's probably going to be for narcotics. That's kind of what my specialty was. Those guys are awesome, doing an awesome job, and they're running their butts off, but man, they're just really not home a lot. Is this the example I want to set for my kids? And it was pretty easy. I was like, no, this is not what I want to do. And as painful as it was to turn it down, I don't regret that. And by the way, I never got another shot at it, because, sometimes you get one shot at life and you got to make a decision, but I still don't regret it, because that was a decision I made for my kids. And how can you fault or have any regrets when you make a decision for your kids? So I was curious what your thoughts, does that resonate with you, or what was that similar to what you went through with your 2 oldest?
Yeah. It was just, I think really what made triggered the awareness for me was, I found myself struggling with some things, right? Just emotionally and spiritually. Right. And my wife finally, God bless her. I mean, every man has to have a good wife or a good woman behind him, right? And she just told me, she said, you know what? You haven't shut off since we came out here and you took this undersheriff's job. She's like, I remember when you used to be able to shut down on your days off and take off cop mode. And she's always joked about how when I would put on the uniform, I would inflate, right? And she's like, and you just become this inflated and big intimidating dude. And she's like, you have not figured out how to shut that off since we've come out here. And she's like, you don't know how to be you and to just be silly like you used to be. And there was kind of that realization for me that I'm like, okay, I'm not, something's changed here and I'm not being me anymore. And that's not who I want to be for my kids. I mean, my kids were still pretty young when I left. I think my oldest was, still 5, at the time that I left. And so, I think that was really the biggest motivator. I mean, yeah, I mean, it was rooted in my children, just like you, and it was this awareness that, I don't want to demonstrate to them that any job, any career is worth burning yourself out and damaging and impacting your mental health.
You saying that, I'm telling you, it's going to resonate with somebody because Ryan and I, like, we're just so fortunate to hear so often now from people on the job that are going through a lot of these things. And I know someone's gritting their teeth. I was just talking to one yesterday, gritting their teeth, trying to make it to 25 years, saying 12 years left, 12 years left. I'm like, what kind of lifestyle?
I know.
It's horrible. I felt so bad for him. I'm like, you don't have to stay 12 more years. He's like, well, that's what I'm going to do. And it's like, oh my God, it's heartbreaking to hear, cops that are just sticking it out because they feel like they have to, not because they want to. That's a great job. It's a beautiful job, but you have to want to do it, not just for the compensation. Crazy.
Yeah. I talk to guys all the time that tell me that same thing. And the picture that always comes to my mind is like when, watching Looney Tunes as a kid and, there would be a character who's in a jail cell and he's sitting there etching the hash marks on the wall of how many days he's got left. Right. And, I used to tell people I served 3 years in county jail, in 12-hour shifts. And I mean, that's the reality of it. Right. And so, I get that. And, I tell those guys, usually it's just a matter of numbers, right? Like sit down and do the math, because in most cases, from the entrepreneurial standpoint, if you have a really good idea and a solid business plan and you know how to execute on it and you know how to track your numbers, chances are you may actually come out on top of where you would have been spending that 12 years just waiting to collect that pension. And it's just not necessarily worth it. Right now, I've been accused of trying to create a mass exodus from law enforcement. And I'm like, dude, I ain't that special. Nobody's paying that much attention. But that's not the goal, right? Like we need good cops. We absolutely have to have good cops on the job, but there's enough people out there that are unhappy and are miserable. It's not worth it. And what I want to try to create in them is this paradigm shift that says, you know what, I don't have to, stick it out through this misery and hate my job every day, because you know what? I'm sorry, let's be blunt with each other here. If you hate your job when you wake up in the morning and that's the attitude you go in with, guess what? Everybody else hates working with you. Okay. You're not doing anybody any favors, and you're certainly not doing yourself, your spouse, your family any favors either.
Man, absolutely. And it goes for any job. I mean, really, like my sister's a nurse and I talked to her about this, or my brother's also a police officer. It goes for any job. If you don't love it and you're gritting your teeth and you're now unlikable to your family, or you're a curmudgeon, or you're self-medicating with alcohol or drugs, like all these negative things that come out of it, is it worth it? Like, yeah. I don't think it's worth it at all. And the cops that love it and are so passionate, like I love that. There's a couple guys I follow on LinkedIn that I kind of just stumbled upon their profiles, and they are like just every day posting different shots in the field from their police car. And I'm like, these guys love it and it's inspiring to see, but that's not everybody, and to paint everybody the broad brush, or to act like if you don't love it, then you're not really one of us, or, you have to find your own path. And, maybe it was law enforcement for 25 years, maybe it was for 3 or 4 or 12, or you move on to something else. It's just a job that will end at some point. It's not forever. Yeah.
And I think as of late, the last couple of years, especially, what it's really become is most cops really like the idea of what law enforcement should be, what our ideal, this is what it ought to be like to go into work every day and do my job versus what it's actually become over the last several years. And so that's the challenge I see most guys stuck in, is they're like, well, I don't hate the job, I just hate the current environment of it. Right. And I get that. And I wasn't there. I didn't hate my job. I didn't hate the environment. I loved it. I loved being in leadership. We had a great agency. I felt like things were going smooth. I was amped up to go to work every day. I just didn't like what it was actually doing to me in my personal life.
It's about accountability. And my exit was kind of very similar, where, you can find all these things to blame or point the finger at, but at the end of the day, it's up to us and us alone. So I can't get upset or mad at what somebody else does. I have to look at my life and am I happy or not happy? If the answer is no, then what changes am I making? What ownership am I taking to make it better? And I feel like that's an issue. A lot of cops that it's really anybody, but we were all there, I think, at one point in our lives where you're younger, you don't recognize how much control or say you have in your own life. So it's easier to resent other people or point the finger at other people when things go wrong. And I just got to a point that I don't feel as fulfilled as I used to be. And I've always a passionate guy. So I have to be 100% in or I just can't do it. And it was just a slow progression of, I think I'm going to leave and do something else. And I know there's other cops that are like that. And that's why I think it's awesome what you're doing to create a platform or an avenue for someone to make that transition.
Yeah. It's been a labor of love, and it just kind of happened on accident. I wish I could say that was what I set out to do, but it honestly just kind of fell on my plate or on my lap. And that was kind of a light bulb moment where I said, there's a need here. And looking around, I'm like, is there anybody else that's more well suited that I'm aware of right now to actually fill this need than I am? And it almost felt like a call to action to me of, no, I don't know that there is. And so I was like, well, I'm going to step up and step into this, because it was something I felt excited about and saw the need for it and the importance of it.
So that's cool. And I just want to say, Adam, it's amazing how many police officers and former police officers that I talk to, and our stories are aligned so similar. I mean, from your beginning, when you were part-time in the town you started in New York, I had a very similar occurrence in my hometown. I didn't move 2/3 of the way across the country. I just went 40 miles away to a different town, but very similar beginning. And I started noticing in my career what you mentioned is I don't shut down. I can't come down from where I'm at, whether it was just heightened anxiety, heightened awareness, or who I had to become when I put the uniform on to survive the street. I realized more and more I could not be that person. It was more and more that I realized that, and that started to increase my anxiety, because I'd say to myself, I can't come down from, like you say, you're inflated when you put that uniform on. I couldn't come down. I couldn't stop being that person at all. And that would increase my anxiety even more. And I guess leaving was life-changing, as much as, like you said, I loved the job. There were just some things, culture-wise, that I couldn't keep going in that environment. So you touched on it a little bit, but I'd love to hear a little bit more of how that process went from when you realized that you didn't want that to your family. You were sitting there as Adam, the police officer, and you realized you didn't want to set that example for your family, to Adam, the entrepreneur, and actually taking that courage to say, at the time when you left, sounds like you had 3 kids at that time.
Yes. Yeah. I was about to have our third. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So two kids, one on the way, and I'm going to walk away from a job that pays me a paycheck every week and a pension. How did that go? How challenging was that? And what was that path like?
Yeah. I mean, I wish I could say it was my decision, but it actually wasn't, and I feel like, as far as the whole inability to shut down part, I kind of did that to myself in a way, because I've just always been very driven, as most cops are, right? If if I set my sights on something that needs to be done, I'm like, by golly, I'm going to get it done, and I'm going to find the path to do it. And, but I don't stop there. I'm always looking for what's the next thing. How do I make this better and better and better? Right. So then when I found myself at essentially the helm of an entire agency, and saying, okay, how can I make us a benchmark? How can I make us better? I was constantly, thinking of what needs to happen next, and how do we do this, and how do we implement this thing, and how do we structure this, and how do we, right? So, I mean, it was like, which was good, right? Like we got a lot done. But part of that was too, in being a small agency, we had 28 sworn. Everybody has to really balance their roles, and everybody's wearing lots of different hats, right? There's no, even as an administrator, as the undersheriff, I didn't have the luxury of just sitting in the office all day, right? That wasn't how it worked, right? I had to be a part of things. And so, long story short, we had a lot of crime that was related to drugs, drug trafficking, that sort of thing, a lot of it cartel based, and that sort of thing. And I was on the U.S. Marshals Task Force at the time as well. So I did 4 years with the U.S. Marshals Task Force and as a deputized U.S. Marshal, and I kind of became the de facto drug guy, because that was part of what I did when I was at my prior law enforcement agency, and had really good knowledge of it, had a lot of connections and resources. And so my guys are all tied up with all these other things. So I'm like, well, I'll do some proactive drug work. And that just unraveled into all these other things. And before I knew it, not only was I working on the U.S. Marshals Task Force and doing that whole thing, but also on a task force with the FBI and DEA, working some narcotics and firearms trafficking cases in the tri-state area. And so I spent 2 years actually working in this case with them, essentially undercover, and none of my staff other than the sheriff even knew about it. And so it was all because we were trying to keep it real close, real quiet. Spent 2 years doing that. And so the only way that a guy who's the undersheriff and kind of part of the face of a law enforcement agency can accomplish that is by spending hours outside of the office hours working some more. And so I was spending time in the middle of the night going out and doing drug buys with CIs and all sorts of stuff. Well, my guys had no idea. Right? And so that all came to a head, right? Actually, before like within a year of the end of my law enforcement career, and we ended up indicting 37 people on federal drug trafficking and firearms trafficking charges. And then I got to surprise everybody one morning at, dark 30 and said, "Hey, everybody suit up. It's time to go hit some houses." And they're like, "What?" Right. So, and they show up to briefing and there's FBI guys and DEA there. But, so I kind of burned myself out during that period of time. Right. But the way things really kind of came to a head was actually an election. And so my sheriff was up for re-election, and we thought, we were kind of riding this wave, this high of, things have been really good. Our stats were awesome. We were crushing it. We were, doing all kinds of good work, wrapping up major cases and stuff like that. And we had we felt like a good reputation in the community. People were supportive of us. Well, we ended up having a contested primary with another contender. And we really didn't we really didn't anticipate that things were going to change. We didn't put a whole lot of stock in that contender. Unfortunately, that contender ran on a platform of lots of deceit and lies. And we chose to take the higher road of not responding to a lot of that. We thought, you know what, we're just going to let our reputation speak for itself. And I don't regret that. I feel like that was the right choice. But ultimately the deceit won out by like 120 votes. And so I had 6 months to go, okay, well, now what? Right. I've got 6 months because the undersheriff is an appointed position. It goes with the sheriff. Right. So I knew I was going to be out and had to figure out kind of what was next. And I had other opportunities. Even the U.S. Marshals kind of offered to help bring me on, what's the word I'm looking for? make sure my application got through the process, I guess we'll say. But I didn't want to move, right? We moved here for a reason. This is where my wife's family was. And, kids have their cousins and their grandparents. And we're like, I had to reason at that point. There was this reckoning of, what's most important in my life right now? Is it my career or is it my family and my kids? And am I willing to sacrifice my career if the latter is more important? And the answer to that was yes. I didn't want to go anywhere else. I didn't want to move my family, and decided, nope, it's time to do something different. And so that's where I naturally have always had a bent towards entrepreneurship, and started moving in that direction.
Brian,
Wow.
can I cut in real quick? Because Adam said something
Absolutely.
that I didn't want to miss an opportunity to respond, and I'm afraid I'll forget. You talked about the election and how the other candidate was, a little deceitful, a little dirty in their tactics. And it just made me think about leadership in general, where this country's going of, I feel like
Not a little, very.
Yeah. Oh, geez.
Anyway.
I feel like the people that play it right, that have the best intentions, are the most virtuous. It's those virtues that prevent them from doing the dirty tactics that other people do. So on the surface, those dirty people seem to get a leg up because they're willing to go to lengths that people with values aren't willing to go. I don't know how we fix that, other than compromising our values to match what they're doing. But it's no surprise that sometimes people and narcissists and egomaniacs come out on top because they're willing to push the limits and lie and do things that other people aren't willing to do. It's just frustrating. It's frustrating. I don't know how we fix that as a country.
Yeah, I have an opinion and a perspective on that, which I know some people will disagree with, and that's okay. I believe in a God that created the universe, right? And I believe that he has our best interests in mind, and he knows our path, right? But we think we know what's best for ourselves, but we don't necessarily. And he's always looking out for us. And I can easily look back now, and even though it was a really trying time for me, where I was angry and resentful, and was like, this isn't the way this should go. We were being, we were upfront and honest, and we were above bar, and he wasn't. This isn't the way it should happen. I think now I can look back and say that if I had stayed in it, if that election had changed and went the other direction, I'd have been running for sheriff this time around, and would be in this career for much longer. And I probably would have jeopardized my own mental health and my relationship with my family in the process. And so my God knew what was better for me. Right. And sometimes that's hard. Right. And it's just like the correction of a parent, right? Your parents, when we're kids, they often know it's better for us, and we don't like being told no. But we can look back and recognize that they were just looking out for us, right? And so that's my opinion. And well, I still have a hard time with how that went, and that particular individual. I'll just admit, it's been a good thing. It's been a positive thing, and I know that this was what was best.
I like how you said that, because I think there's this misnomer that, or maybe not, it depends on each situation, but you leave law enforcement, you go become an entrepreneur. Well, you turn one corner and you enter the new space without looking back. I feel like that's not really the case. I feel like there's a big gray area, and I really wasn't prepared to leave. I didn't want to leave. It wasn't part of my plans to leave, but I had to leave to make a choice that was healthy for me. And by the way, I still miss that, but I had to make this choice. Like, you can have a little bit of both. And I feel like sometimes talking to people, it's like, well, I love being a cop. I did too. I loved it. It was the best job I ever had. But guess what? I couldn't do it anymore. I had to start making changes in my life. So I feel like we need to talk about that more, because that'll help some people that are on the fence by saying, well, you can still love it and want to do it, but you also recognize, like you did, which is a credit to you, that I can't do this anymore and be the person and the father, husband I want to be.
Yeah.
Credit to you.
Yeah. And it was pretty much a constant struggle over the last 3 years, wanting to, or sometimes thinking like, maybe I should go back, or maybe I should get a part-time job, or maybe I should go reserve somewhere. Right. Because I do miss it. I loved that job. I loved everything about it. Right. But I suppressed that. And finally, my post certification lapsed in January. And so now I don't have to worry about that decision anymore, because I can I can dang sure assure you that I am not going to go through an academy again. So now that Band-Aid's been ripped off, and it is not even a question anymore.
So Adam, we talked a lot about the job and police work and our experiences there, but we also on the show, we like to future pace and look at what people are doing now and what's next. So what are you working on right now that you're really excited about?
I think there's always a lot of excitement. I really find a great sense of joy around LEO to CEO and what that's all about. Obviously that's a big part of, like you led in with that. My main company is actually a marketing agency. I got into marketing and website design years and years and years ago. I actually started building websites on my grandpa's computer when I was in high school. And so it was kind of always a hobby of mine. And then it just grew. And I had this epiphany, if you will, after I started my business full time in marketing, when I realized that there was a connection between marketing and my law enforcement career. Because initially I had people ask me all the time, well, how did you go from law enforcement to marketing? And I never really knew how to answer that. And then one day it dawned on me, because I was a CVSA examiner. So interview interrogation was one of the things I really enjoyed doing. And I had learned about the concept of narrative transportation theory one time in one of my interview interrogation courses I went through. And the idea there is that in the interview room, when you build rapport with the interviewee, you use story, you leverage story in order for them to share the details of whatever the incident may be, right? Because human brains are just wired for story. And so if you allow somebody to tell their story, usually you get much better and more accurate information from them. Well, one day I realized that narrative transportation theory and this idea of story worked really well in marketing. And once I figured that out and started to put those pieces of the puzzle together, that was where things kind of took off in that regard. And then, LEO to CEO kind of sprouted out of a podcast that I started, trying to just reach an audience and speak into them, admittedly, because I wanted my guests to become clients. and so, out of that, I started getting a lot of feedback from guys and girls that were like, hey, can you give me some marketing advice or business advice or, this and that and the other thing. And I started just recognizing that there was a need. And so the thing I'm really excited with LEO to CEO right now is that it's been taken off. And we've been adding members. We're doing live workshops every month, bringing in special guests that are presenting on various topics in business and marketing. We started mastermind groups here recently, which is really cool for our members. And I'm just excited to see where that goes. It's still not admittedly as big of a community as I'd like it to be. I know there's a lot more cops out there to reach that are interested in entrepreneurship and are already trying to grow businesses and are maybe feeling a little lost and not sure how to do that the best way. And I really want to be able to reach them and be able to do that. But that's what's exciting to me, is continuing to pour into those folks.
And that's awesome, because that's one of my things I realized when I left. Another thing that was kind of similar with us is someone, so that you counting the years left, and I still had more years left to work than I'd been on. And one of the other officers looked at me and said, you don't necessarily want to sit here and wish away the rest of your life. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. Why do I want to sit here and wish away 20 years of my life? And that was a big realization for me, and a real thought that, maybe it is time to go do something else. So just getting that awareness out there and that information that, listen, there is so much that you can go and do, and so much that's available for you, so much opportunity if you're not happy. And maybe, first and foremost, like you said, we want people to continue to be police officers. We want people to be the best possible police officers that we can. But if you're beyond that, or you're so fed up you can't do it anymore, make yourself happy.
Yeah. Well, and I would say, even if you are happy, one of the things that I've been trying to reinforce through my podcast and the community is that you need to have a backup plan. Because, look, I had no idea that I was going to be leaving my law enforcement career. And it's only because I actually had this freelance kind of side gig. I was building websites for people and stuff. And I'm like, well, I know I could make money doing that. And then it just grew and flourished and evolved from there. Right. But, a lot of guys just don't have any plan at all. They have no idea what they're going to do next. And in fact, one of the guys that works for me now that I refer to by many titles, but often as my right-hand man, Austin, he actually used to work for me. He was one of my sergeants, and he left the sheriff's office after the sheriff and I did, and went to another law enforcement agency and ended up in 2 officer-involved shootings in 2020. He ended up with one, went on the whole leave thing and fit for duty and all that, and then came back, and within 3 months ended up in another shooting. And the agency didn't treat him very well on the second one, even though that one was just as clear cut, if not more so, than the first one. He decided, it's time to leave, but he didn't have a backup plan. And I hope he'd be okay with me sharing this, but he actually left and ended up working for Walmart security for a while because he didn't have any other plan. And luckily my marketing agency was growing during that time, and I started bringing him on, doing some part-time work, and now he's full-time. And like I said, he's my right hand. And so I just want to encourage guys and gals that are still on the job, that are happy. You don't know when that might change, right? You might end up in an accident tomorrow. You might end up having to be forced to use deadly force on someone tomorrow, and that may end your career for one reason or another, even if it was justified and completely honorable. You just don't know. And why be unprepared? Have a plan. And that plan may be, I'm going to go pursue a career in corporate security. Great. That plan may be, I've always enjoyed the idea of entrepreneurship, and I have a backup business plan in my file drawer that says, this is the type of business I'm going to launch. This is the products this is my ideal customer, my audience. This is right. An actual business plan that you could pull out and then execute on. Right. And that's a real paradigm shift I want to create in law enforcement in general. In fact, I hope as this thing grows to start impacting curriculum for a lot of the academies around the country at some point, that this needs to be talked about. I mean, pretty much every company in the private sector, and heck, the military, you go into the military, this, Chad, when you leave the military, and Ryan, I think, were you a veteran too?
I was not, no.
Oh, okay. Sorry. When you leave the military, you go through a transition course, right? Like they tell you, okay, what are you going to transition into? They help you with that. And they plant the idea in your head that the first rule of being in the military is you can't be in the military forever. You have to retire at some point. That rule exists in law enforcement too. You can't be, that's the first rule of being a cop, is you can't be a cop forever. So let's plan on what that looks like, because there's nothing that pains me more. And I'm sorry if this offends anybody, but there's nothing that pains me more than seeing a guy put in 20, 30 years of law enforcement service, retire for a week to go golfing in Florida, and then come back and sit at the front desk doing VIN inspections for the next 20 years.
Yeah, that happens all the time.
Yeah.
It's funny. I was talking to a deputy chief today. He is a deputy chief of a county detective for the district attorney's office in Pennsylvania. Big office, affluent area, active. And he said, I never wanted to be deputy chief. I just want to be a county detective and investigate crimes. But, the opportunity presented itself. And he's like, you know how much leadership training I've been to before that? Zero. It wasn't until I got that position that, then I went to like a week-long training. And it's like, we don't coach enough. We don't mentor enough. We don't prepare and groom the next generation of leaders. We just wait for an opportunity to come, and there's an opportunity to go ahead and put in for it. What about that mentorship and coaching before that happens? So when the opportunity presents itself, you're like, I'm ready to go. I've been training. I don't know everything, but I'm confident in my abilities. I've been watching somebody I trust and respect. I'm ready for this. I think that's how we're going to fix some of the broken leadership issues, and you being in coaching. I mean, I think that we need to roll that out, start introducing coaches in police academies, start putting that out there. So when you hit that roadblock in your career, which is going to happen for all of us, even if it's a little hiccup, you have somebody you can reach out to.
Yeah. I'll be bold here again and say that, one of the key indicators of an abusive relationship is limiting your knowledge and awareness about what else is out there and what your skill set actually is, and that you're desired elsewhere. Right. And I'm sorry to say it, but somehow that's become culturally acceptable in law enforcement. And I don't know how. And I think most leaders are doing it without even realizing that they're doing it. It's not like they intend to do that, but it seems somehow culturally in our law enforcement agencies, we have to keep everybody down so that they stay, because we're so afraid to lose people and then have to fill those holes.
Bro, that is the truest thing I've heard in a long time. I never thought about it like that, but I get fired up because yes, that is absolutely true. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. Just true. That is true.
Yeah. And like I said, it's not that I think as soon as somebody becomes promoted to a deputy chief or a chief or a undersheriff or a sheriff, that all of a sudden they're like, oh, I'm going to be abusive to my people here, and I'm going to hold them back from what they could achieve. And I don't want them to think that there's anything better out there. Like, nobody goes through that level of conscious thinking, I hope. But it's just part of the culture, unfortunately. Yeah. And I think we need to be building people up to say, you know what, we don't want miserable cops. We want happy cops. And if that means we've got to help you find what's next for you in your life career, then let's do that. Let's do that for people.
Dude, I'm glad you said that. And I want to say that we are really missing the mark on that. I'll be even a little bit more bold. Some of the most insanely talented people I know are cops. I mean, builders, painters, photographers, poets. Poem writers. That was funny. But I mean, like play instruments, sing. I mean, some amazingly talented people. And yet we don't foster that part of them. It's almost like we ridicule them for that. We attack them for that. You're a cop. Well, hold on a second. This is what I do. But man, I really see potential that you might not even see in yourself. Have you ever thought about exploring that and really encouraging and fostering this growth attitude and mindset? You hit it on the head. And I think that would minimize a lot of the depression and mental health issues that cops feel, because one, they feel like I'm not just a cop. I'm a person this is what I do, but I have all these opportunities and talents. But two, there are people in my profession, in my industry, in my agency who celebrate me for other things other than just writing a lot of tickets or making a lot of arrests.
Yeah.
I think growth is necessary. I mean, we get on the job. We're hard chargers. We love going out and stopping cars, writing tickets, finding warrants and hunting people down, chasing bad guys. Fun as hell. And then after a couple of years, you're like, all right, I wrote, I stopped 300 cars, and 297 of them were just people going to work, driving a little fast. It's like, this is getting old. And then you hit that point, you're like, oh, but there's nothing else. There's a couple of detectives that are going to be there forever. There's no openings for anyone else. I'm stuck. And all of a sudden it's like, yeah, you are. And then you develop that fixed mindset.
And it's totally counterintuitive, because the reality is, and I don't remember what book I read this in. I read a lot of, I read by listening, but I crave knowledge about, leadership and business and marketing, all those things. Right. And so there was some book that I read, and it was talking about how one of the principles of a company that has low attrition is pouring into your people. Right. And it is counterintuitive, because we're afraid that if we build them up and we pour into them, almost like we're saying, hey, your whole purpose here is so I can prepare you for something else. We're afraid that means we're going to lose them. Right. But the reality is that level of loyalty that demonstrates to your own people, that doesn't go unnoticed. Right. And they recognize that, hey, this company or this law enforcement agency really cares about me and my growth. So why am I going to prematurely leave when I'm not ready? They're going to continue building me up. So why am I not going to let them continue to build me? And I think if we shifted to that mindset in law enforcement, we would see less of that attrition.
Mm-hmm. So Adam, let's say there's an officer, and they're sitting here, they're listening to this podcast, and they're like, all right, I need either a backup plan, or this is me. I'm not happy here anymore. I want to leave. What would be the first thing that they should do? Start taking action towards implementing something.
The first thing that I would encourage them to do is to please go to leo to CEO.com. That's LEO, the number 2, CEO.com. You can actually do either one. It'll go to the same place, but go there and check out on the homepage, you'll see a spot where there's the law enforcement transition course. It's a free course available to any cop out there that wants to take it. And I think there's like 27 modules in that course that we put together, lessons, that we put together. It's all about the idea of preparing for transition. So like, you don't have to go through this course knowing that now is the time. In fact, I would rather you do it now preemptively so that you know what to be aware of. I partnered with some really awesome people on that course. It's not just me as a talking head throughout the whole thing. But we broke it into three main modules. The first module is all about transition. And I share in there my own transition story, even more detailed than I did today, about some of the mental, emotional things that I struggled with during that transition, about feeling like I was losing my identity. But I also partnered with Lauren Rich, who I think you guys had on the show here recently. And she contributed to that as well in that module. And then module 2 is all about transitioning out of law enforcement into corporate security and what that opportunity looks like, how to prepare yourself for that, prepare your resume, prepare for an interview, start developing the soft skills that are necessary, all of those things. And I know nothing about that. So Carlos Francisco, who is, we'll say a leading expert with a very large and well-known social media platform that recruits former cops for corporate security jobs. He contributed to that along with Scott Walker. And then module 3 is all about transitioning into entrepreneurship. And the goal is to tell you, hey, here's the foundational things that you need to understand and know to prepare for transitioning out of your cop work if you want to go down one of these 2 paths. And like I said, it's free course. So go take it.
Wow. Awesome. LEO to CEO.com. That is
right here.
Great. Awesome resource for people. And even, I know so many police officers who sit and watch Netflix in the car, passing the shift. So there's an opportunity to go in, at least take a peek, take a look at some of the modules, maybe take something away. That is awesome. LEO to CEO.com. We'll definitely put the link to that down in the show notes as well.
Ryan, and I love what Adam was saying as far as even if you don't know what you want to do. And I feel like that's what holds up, and I'll speak to somebody really close to me that is a cop and wanting to leave, and they don't know what they want to do. They don't know all these things, but so they just kind of shut it down. I'm like, well, hold on, explore these feelings, explore it. Just start writing things down, whether it's attainable or not, viable, not just write things down. So I like, Ryan, what Adam said is go on, take this. You don't have to have all the answers. Adam's a coach as well, so he can help walk you through some of this stuff. Hit him up if you're looking to leave. By the way, we are all going to leave at some point, so
yes,
you should be going through it.
So one of the funny things that we discovered going through and putting that course content together, Carlos and I were talking, and we realized that the common denominator of cops that are trying to transition into corporate security, as well as cops that are trying to start their own business, regardless of which path, the common denominator that holds them back is that they have an unrealistic expectation of what it actually is. And so like the first thing is let's get your expectations right. And that's kind of what this is all about. Carlos was saying that nobody has an accurate understanding of what corporate security actually is. And so when they go in there just thinking, oh, I'm a cop and therefore I'm shoo-in for this, I'm going to apply and I'm going to say cop things and tell them all about my SWAT experience. And that doesn't work. And then you'll never get the job. Right. And same thing with entrepreneurship, right? If you go into it thinking it's all rose-colored glasses and not understanding what the actual process is, I would guarantee you 8 or 9 times out of 10, you're going to put the wrong foot forward first. And you're going to start working on the things that you're not actually ready to work on. There's foundational things that need to be done for a successful business.
Adam, I don't know that I would have gone into entrepreneurship had I known all the details. This is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. So I'm actually
Very
glad
rewarding,
I didn't know.
though, too.
And it's also extremely rewarding. It's just, I'm glad I didn't know what I didn't know. So I'm just a knucklehead. I just go through life. So figure it out as I go
Yeah.
along.
Harder it is, the bigger the rewards, right?
Yep.
Adam, I definitely feel like we could sit here and do a Joe Rogan style 3.5 hour podcast, man. But
Definitely.
it has been awesome having you on the show. Before we wrap things up, I'm gonna get a book recommendation from you and give Chad a minute to get his 5 questions in mind. So I'm a big book guy. I heard you mentioned how you love to read. Sounds like audio books. I can see Start With Why in your background, man. I love that centerpiece. So what's Adam's favorite book?
Well, I'm gonna go a bit cliche here because my foundation as a marketing agency is built around the concept of story brand. And so if you've never heard of story brand, I guess check that out. But so my book recommendation is going to be Marketing Made Simple by Donald Miller. Donald Miller is the founder of StoryBrand. And Marketing Made Simple, it is very literally, it is a framework for how to market any business. And it gives you the execution steps and everything from front to back. And so that's my book recommendation. There's so many good books though out there, but that's the one I'll go with.
That's awesome. I know you sound like you're just like me. You know, what's a book recommendation? It's like just one.
Yeah.
All right, Adam, 5 questions. This is a game that's going to take off and be big. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. I love doing it. I say this every interview, and I love doing it because this is kind of my style. Like I love asking obscure things and getting people answers. So as fast as you can, as best as you can, but if there's a good story involved with it, feel free to share as well.
You didn't warn me about this.
This is why we don't do that.
It's spontaneous.
Exactly. All right. So we're ready. You ready to go?
Okay. I'm ready. Yep.
Let's do it. Craziest, and keep it short if you can. Craziest cop story.
Craziest cop story would actually be when I was in the jail. Maybe this is not craziest, but it's certainly it sticks out in my memory. Unfortunately, we had a guy up in the mental health unit that liked to play tic-tac-toe on the walls with his own poop.
Nothing like a little feces tic-tac-toe. All right.
Yeah. Well, it poop marbles underneath the door too. That was pretty nasty. But anyway, yeah.
Dude, if people
the theme is poop.
If people were never in healthcare or first responders, or you just don't understand some of the crazy things people do. It's unbelievable. All right, you're captured. You're a prisoner. This is a crazy scenario, by the way. You're a prisoner. You're captured. Hands behind your back. You got a sandbag over your head, and they're torturing you with music, loud, annoying music. What is the song that is absolutely going to drive you crazy?
The Bee Gees, Staying Alive, or whatever the name of I don't know the name of the song, but you know what I'm talking about, right? I think it's just called Staying Alive, right?
Good song. No, I got the beat in my head now. They
No,
taught us how to
no.
do CPR today. Staying
No,
alive.
thank you.
All right, first celebrity crush.
First celebrity crush. Oh, Jessica Alba.
Oh,
Jessica
Alba.
Jessica Alba, right? I think I like gosh, I'm really bad with names today. Yes, I'll just stick with Jessica Alba. Yeah.
My wife loves Jessica Alba. She's so beautiful. She is. She's pretty. Mine was Britney Spears. I have her posters on my wall in my barracks room in the Army. It was always interesting. Yeah. All right, your favorite hobby. Weekend, you're doing something. Pretend you have nothing, no distractions. What is something that you're doing that you really love to do?
Hunting big game.
Nice.
And totally finish this thing off with, and I'm hoping I can get something emotional out of you. And I think I know the answer to this, but who is the most impactful person in your life, and why do you find them that way or love them so much?
Easily my wife. You know what? She is a very patient, generous, and just an amazing mother. But she always knows how to be honest with me when I need to hear honesty. But she does it in a way that is always it's direct yet gentle at the same time. And I can tell you 100% I wouldn't be who I am or where I am today if it wasn't for her.
Woo! Mrs. Wills, you are the bomb. 5 questions, Adam. You did awesome, buddy. Thank you.
Awesome.
And so, Adam, thanks so much for taking the time to come on the show. Like I said, I was looking forward to this, and you definitely delivered, man. I had a lot of fun. For our listeners who want to find you out on the World Wide Web and on social media, I know you mentioned your website. We're going to put that in the show notes. Where else can our listeners find you?
Yeah, just go check me out on LinkedIn. That's the best place. I absolutely hate and despise social media. It's not something I enjoy, so I really don't do anything on any other platform except LinkedIn. That's where I'm most active. I try to post there regularly, and so just check me out on LinkedIn. I think it's like you go to LinkedIn / I think it's the real Adam Wills or something like that. But if you just search for me, you'll find me.
The real Adam Wills. I like that. And I want to say one thing before we go, right? Every cop in the world should at least message Adam. Hit him up on LinkedIn, send him an email through the website, and just say, hey, I have 4 years left. I have 10 years left. I have 6 months left. I have 21 years left, and I don't want to do this anymore. Like, what are some of the thoughts, or what are some things I could do now to get some clarity about where I want to go in life? It's really that simple. And to let the conversation go and see where that takes you. And you'd be surprised at that expiration phase, how much clarity you get out of that. And all it takes is you pick up the phone or pick up your phone or your email and send a message. And you have people out there that are doing this as a career, that they care about you. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Just hit them up.
Absolutely.
Everybody, thanks for joining us today.